So I put a post out yesterday just quickly showing like the laziest way to set up your Grokbot using what is known as the RACI framework. And for the most part, I thought this was pretty much common knowledge for really anyone that went to like a business school or was in a corporate environment. These were like tactics that were used for project management. And for the most part, they weren't really the types of items that you're like really put too much value in. But for these agents that really don't forget, they actually are pretty good, solid frameworks. So essentially the gist of it here is RACI is just another project management framework. It stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. It's a way really to just map roles and responsibilities for every team member for the tasks that are there. So applying this to Grokbot is pretty straightforward, where essentially what we can do for each of the items is you're going to delegate, like we kind of mentioned up here, a chief of staff role, which there's plenty of tutorials that are kind of talking about this pattern of a chief of staff. But essentially the way that I've been looking at it with using Grokbot for the last week is trying to avoid agent sprawl and spending the time first with the chief of staff to train them on a specific task, have it go through it manually and set up the automations. And then after that task has been completed correctly, then ask it the question around, okay, now based on everything that you learned about said task, I'd like you to either establish a new agent or delegate to an existing agent this responsibility. You as the chief of staff are now accountable for that agent to do its work. However, the newly created agent will be responsible. Now, the beauty of how Grokbot works is because they talk to each other, the chief of staff or any of the other agents that you create, you can set up as in a consulting role where if one person specializes in a specific task, it can now give the information or delegate that over to the one that knows it and is specialized appropriately. Now, in an informed situation, haven't really gotten deep into this, but essentially the gist of it would be if there's a report or something that needs to come back to me as the human, I would essentially be the informed in that type of scenario. So let's just do a quick breakdown of showing what this looks like from a practical lens. So the very first thing that we do with any new chief of staff that we set up is we connect it into a second brain or knowledge base. So for us, we have, for each business unit, we have a dedicated second brain that's purpose-built for the things that matter. And we organize them based off of the open knowledge format and giving them each their own dedicated sets of folders and files or where things go. And each of those folders and files will have very specific types of information around marketing, sales, intelligence, operations, and finance, among some others, but those are really the core 5. Now, when it comes into making this data tier extremely personalized and practical for the Grokbots, that's where the skills framework comes into play. And essentially all skills is their standard operating procedures that we've put into agent native capabilities that each of them are able to utilize. So we have a set inside of our second brain where, going back to the core 5 of the pillars, each one of those sets will have different types of skills that are bucketed into the 5 categories. So whenever we set up a new Grokbot, the easiest way to do this is to set up the chief of staff role. And inside that chief of staff role, the very first thing we do is we set up the connectors going through the normal onboarding process. And in this case, I'm just using the GitHub command line interface to be able to pull down the second brain, allow the chief of staff to become familiar with our business, and then after we do that, go through the assessment to determine, based on very tactical specific tasks, which ones to do. So in these examples, we have one set up right now, one is for my YouTube content strategy. I'm trying to learn how to figure out YouTube right now. It's not a natural skill set, so I've been setting up an agent that's its pure job is to start thinking through how to be able to put the messaging through clearly. Now, we have ones for search engine optimization, another one for a finance bot. So we're starting to think through for Return My Time, like how can we actually get QuickBooks set up in such a way where all of our line items are done by a Grokbot that's able to review, reconcile, and then eventually close out the books on a monthly basis. And for our school community,
This is the one that I'm working on right now, which is literally to every day go through and be able to scan and look for, okay, what questions do the community members have? It's connected with its own agent mail setup, and it goes in every day via a scheduled routine at 9 a.m., looks for messages that are there, so that way we have a notification every day of messages that we may have missed in terms of questions for community members. And then also we're starting to be able to put together a list of wins and things and scheduling them back into a Google Drive. So these are just a couple quick hits of some of the ways that we're starting to utilize Grokbot within our internal operations, but then also being able to use this framework of a chief of staff type role for each entity or any business that you're utilizing, specific task-based Grokbots using the RACI framework that we discussed, and then eventually getting into a position where, in this case, I have a Jarvis executive assistant that oversees each one of them that's there. We're not quite have that one dialed in, but that would be the idea as we're continuing to leverage this. So I hope this is helpful into kind of getting an idea of how we're starting to use Grokbot, and it's just one of a million different use cases as this technology continues to roll out.